She didn't whisper it, she laughed.
He actually thinks both kids are his.
That sentence didn't just bruise me, it rewired my life in a heartbeat. In the space between her words and my next breath, a husband became a witness, a father became a ledger, and our home turned into a crime scene of trust. I didn't shout, I documented. Proof replaced hope, and one quiet night under string lights became the moment I put the truth on a screen for everyone to see. Before we dive into today's story, let us know where you're watching from. And as you watch, don't just sit back, be part of the experience. If a moment grabs your attention, whether it's powerful, unexpected, or deeply moving, drop a comment with the timestamp of that scene and share your thoughts. Your reactions bring the story to life, and we love seeing which moments resonate with you the most. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, grab a coffee or tea, settle in, and let's begin. The morning fairies breathe across the sound, a steady thrum beneath our windows. I wake before the house, pad to the kitchen, and start the grinder. Wet fur slips through the cracked window and meets the first ribbon of espresso. I set Lila's blue pattern mug on the oiled counter, square to the edge the way I square a beam before I drive a screw. The redwood deck beyond the glass is slick with mist, string lights sleeping along the beam I hung last summer. On the photo wall, frames hold our anchors. Beach trips, birthday hats, the shot where Maya's hair whips her cheeks and Noah pretends to glare. That frame sits a hair off level. Routine is joinery. You make the same cuts, choose the right fastener, because a house does not keep itself up. Coffee for Lila, fairy schedule, a flip through the leather folio for today's work. Cascadia Harbor Homes is midway through a reclamation on a Queen Anne bungalow. Plaster gone sour, joists soft as sponge. Footsteps whisper down the hall. Maya shuffles in with a hoodie to her chin, sketchbook under her arm, hair a dark tide. I straighten a twisted strap and slide the cortado toward the spot where Lila likes to stand. "Dad, can you fix this strap?" she murmurs without looking up. "After breakfast," I say. "Fairies on time." She nods and drifts like a small boat cut free from its cleat. Noah arrives later, taller every week, earbuds nested, a restless angle to his shoulders. He kisses the air near my cheek. "Screenings after practice. Don't wait up," he says, already turning for the mudroom. "Text me if you want a ride," I say. "I'm good," he tosses back. "Need a jacket?" I add. "Fine," he says. The house at this hour is simple. Drip on the rail, clink of ceramic, the low song of the sound. I open the folio and count invoices with the pleasure of a habit long mastered. Numbers sit neat in their tabs. We have been growing, and Lila has helped, pushing introductions through a firm called North Star. She is better with clients than I am. She stages rooms with a shawl and a candle, and people lean toward the glow she brings. A navy scarf lies over the back of a chair. Lila leaves such signals in her wake. A vase of mums, a bowl of lemons in this gray light, the faint varnish from the desk she refreshed with a foam brush. My hands are different. I make square things strong. She makes strong things look easy. Maya opens her sketchbook and shows me a lighthouse. The lines are bolder. The beam reaches in a confident fan. "Looks good," I tell her. She shrugs like praise is a gust she does not want and shades the rocks at the base, patient and exact. When the kettle ticks off, she is still working. A small crease between her brows I swear she borrowed from me. "Want a hair tie?" I ask. "Later," she says without looking up. I like the ordinary frictions of this life, the ferry that corrals our days, the kid-shaped mess by the mudroom bench, the scuffed toes of my work boots pointing at the door like a promise I intend to keep. I finish the cortado with a caramel ribbon because Lila pretends not to have a sweet tooth. I place the mug at the angle of her reach. Small courtesies add up to a structure. No one sees the screws under a counter, but the counter knows if you skimped. Noah passes through once more, spins the loose frame further off level, and smirks when I raise an eyebrow. "Leave it, Dad," he says. I let it be. He has a right to test what holds. I jot a note about the bungalow beam, tap the calendar for a city inspector, and stack the folio by the door. Maya closes her book and shoulders her pack. She smells like shampoo and pencils. "You good?" I ask. "Good," she says. The light shifts. Morning does that trick where the gray brightens without turning to blue. I rinse the pitcher, fold the cloth twice, and follow the line of the floorboards toward the hall. A fairy horn gives 2 short notes on the water. The string lights outside keep their shape, every bulb a promise. In a minute, Lila will take the mug, smile over the rim, and tease me for fussing. "Perfectionist," she'll say. "Guilty," I'll answer. "I like fasteners." The house knows the weight of my steps. It creaks where it should and keeps quiet where I have corrected it. I pass the photo where the 4 of us are sunlit and squinting and touch the glass as if to press the moment flatter so it will not curl. At the end of the hall, the carpet softens the world. I lift the mug, warm against my palm, and turn toward the room where my wife is on the phone. Our hallway carries voices like a conduit, and today it carries mine only as breath. The hallway in our house is a conduit. It carries laughter and school announcements and the wet bark of the neighbor's dog on windy nights. It carries the fairy's far-off horn and the hush of rain working its way through cedar. That morning it carried the heat from the mug in my hand and the easy rhythm of my footsteps over carpet. I installed myself, pad dense enough to dampen a fall and soften a secret. I turned the corner with Lila's cortado balance level, caramel ribbon settling along the rim. The carpet muted my approach, and the house seemed to pause the way a beam holds a breath when it takes a load. Her voice floated out thin through the doorway, bright and careless. "He actually thinks the 2 kids are his." The sentence moved like smoke, curling, then vanishing into the paint and crown molding. I didn't drop the mug. Heat pooled at the base of my thumb. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a garbage truck hissed and clanked. Routines carried on without me. A silence, then her voice again lowered. "Keep him soft." The softness she meant was not tenderness, it was pliability. I knew it the way I know when a joist is punky under the chisel. She used a single initial the way people do when they are tired of pretending. E. The hallway gave me her syllables without the warmth of her breath. I stood at the threshold with my weight set back, a man taught for decades to lean into load and now learning the physics of recoil. I eased away as if the air had become delicate. The mug left a faint heat ring on the oiled counter when I set it down. A dot of coffee kissed the wood. I reached for the microfiber cloth and passed it once, precise. The act was so small it could have been nothing, but to me it was triage. Control what I could, where I could, while the larger structure creaked under an unseen shift. I walked into the kitchen the same way I have walked into rooms after an inspector's surprise visit. Face calm, pockets in order, voice even. Lila appeared a moment later with that party-ready smile, hair tucked behind one ear, perfume trailing citrus and something floral. I said, "Coffee's on the counter." She laughed lightly. "You spoil me." The cup touched her mouth, the lie touched mine. We moved around each other like practiced dancers, and I counted the steps. The family photo hung a degree off level again. I did not lift it. I let the world stay, skewed because I needed to see it that way, needed the reminder that plumb and square are not guaranteed. Outside, the string light sagged in the morning gray, like punctuation after a sentence we hadn't written yet. The refrigerator ticked. The faucet dripped once, and somewhere in the living room the radio gave a burst of weather and then quit as if thinking better of it. I inventoried what I had heard. The words were simple, but they carried a load that would shear the wrong fastener. If I drove at them right now, if I hurled emotion like a hammer, I'd split the grain. She would talk about work stress and misunderstandings, and I would be the spectacle in my own kitchen. A builder learns early. You don't pry when glue is fresh, you clamp, wait, and return with the right tool. The day behaved as if none of this mattered. The kids' shoes knocked against the mudroom bench, a school bus moaned past the end of the cul-de-sac, the ferry exhaled across the water on time. I made lunches I barely tasted. I answered a subcontractor's text about a permit delay with the same careful courtesy I've always used. My body moved, my mind measured span and load and the distance between suspicion and proof. Night is better for vows. After the dishes, after routine boiled down to quiet, I went to the garage. The concourse of my days is all here. Bins of screws by size and head, a planer that sings when it hits good grain, the new box of nitrile gloves I tell myself I won't waste. I opened the laptop on the workbench. The cursor blinked like a lighthouse beam. I created a folder and named it Truth. Inside, I made a single text file and typed one word, DNA. The word looked stark. I added another line about timestamps, the small discipline that keeps stories intact when people start tugging at them. Chain of custody, I wrote, though that's not how we speak in this house. In this house we say, "Did you see the harbor tonight?" and "Put your shoes by the door." I saved the file and backed it up to a place Lila couldn't find with a glance. I went back inside and stood at the photo wall. The glass was cool under my fingers. I felt the frame give when I touched it, a tiny float in the hanger like the slack in a rope on a tide. I left it askew, a visible truth. Down the hall, Lila laughed at something on her screen, a sound with no edges. I memorized its pitch, the way I memorized the tone of a tightened strap before I lift a beam. Later, in bed, the ceiling's faint texture gathered shadow, and the house made the small sounds old houses make. A tick in the duct, a settled sigh in the subfloor. My hands lay on the sheet as if they belonged to a man resting after clean work. They were not resting. They were learning stillness. The ferry gave 2 distant notes, and I knew morning would arrive on schedule whether I slept or not. By the time the heater clicked on, my plan had the outline of a frame. I would not confront. I would test. I would hire and log and date and duplicate. I would be the version of myself that has saved roofs and porches and marriages from the weather. Patient, exact, private. The hallway had carried what it had to carry. The rest would move through my hands. Before dawn, the house holds its breath. The heat hasn't kicked on yet, and a cold seam runs the length of the hallway like a hairline crack you only feel with your fingertips. I move in socks, a box of nitrile gloves under my arm and a stack of flat craft envelopes tucked against my ribs. The kids' doors are almost closed. Teenager privacy, so I work with the care you reserve for antique trim. From Maya's vanity, I lift her hairbrush and tease-free 3 strands, lay them in paper, seal the flap with a slow press of my thumb. From Noah's knit beanie hanging on the chair, I pinch a few stray hairs and repeat the ritual. Paper, not plastic. Breath inside the envelope will fog and ruin. Mark's text from last night pings again in my head. Use codes, no names. Photo plus timestamp each envelope. At the kitchen island, I create my small laboratory. I label each envelope with randomized letters and numbers I generated from the model number on my planer, then photograph them beside my watch face. The microfiber cloth sits ready to erase any smear I leave behind. The coffee maker ticks like a metronome, but I don't pour a cup. I need hands steady, not comforted. I print the requisition Mark drafted, black out anything that could be read as a breadcrumb, and slide everything into a padded mailer I have no emotional attachment to. Chain of custody is not a feeling. It is a list you can hand to someone who doesn't love you. In the truck, the world hasn't decided if it's night or morning. I call Colt from the driveway because the kids sleep deep just before daylight. Public spaces only, he says through a yawn he tries to hide. Originals with EXIF, 72 hours. I add no entrapment, no engineered encounters, no cowboy angles. I want distance and metadata and simple facts. We set the window to align with Lila's recurring client nights, the ones that moved dinner late and kept her perfume in the foyer long after she left. I pull the ferry line and kill the engine. The sound wears a scarf of fog and sodium lights float without their poles. I open my laptop and make 3 new subfolders under Truth: DNA, Surveillance, Financial. then drag a copy of Colt's text thread into the third as a PDF while the deckhand waves us forward. I do not delete anything, not the typos, not the repetition. The most damning thing about a lie is how much editing it requires. Truth is messy and intact. Tacoma wakes to bleach and toner. The lab's after-hours drop is a metal slot cut into a wall as blank as a passport photo. I slide the mailer in, feel the aluminum bite through the glove, and step back as though I might hear the envelope land on a particular shelf. Mark's second text arrives. Keep chain clean, don't speculate in writing. I put my phone back in my pocket and let his sentence sit there like a new brace. Daylight is camouflage. At the Queen Anne bungalow, I measure a bowed beam and copy numbers into my notebook, the pencil digging a groove where the lead goes soft. Span, load, deflection, there is relief in math. I speak with a framer about sistering the joist and a plumber about copper that sings when it shouldn't. My phone buzzes against the folio, and I do not look. Work is a ceremony, and I don't break altars. At lunch, I eat standing by the truck bed and think about redwood and ritual. Lila texts a photo of a staging palette, birch, brass, a throw the color of wheat. I answer with a thumbs up I don't feel. It is the right quantity of husband for the hour. In the afternoon, a subcontractor asks if Northstar can grease an introduction for a permit consult. I say we'll stick to our usual lanes. I say it kindly. The words feel like rebar under concrete. Night 3, the garage is a listening room. I pull down the shade, set my laptop on the workbench, and let the house settle around me. Colt's 22-second clip arrives first. Lobby marble, an elevator bank, 2 figures I know as well as my hands. Lila turns her face up for a kiss that doesn't hide, the kind you give when you believe no one you respect is watching. The timestamp blooms in the corner like an unblinking eye. GPS sits under it, a string of digits that means a real place you can walk to. He adds a still, a half embrace, the tilt of shoulders familiar and wrong. I watch the clip once with sound off, then again, and for a third time I let the elevator chime find my ear. I save everything, make a checksum, duplicate to an encrypted drive, and move a copy into truth/surveillance. Then I write a line in my log in small printing letters. Day 3, 22 seconds, hotel lobby, EXIF verified. A minute later, Dr. Evelyn Cho's email lands with the kind of clarity you expect from a person who loves columns. Subject, prelim variance attached. Northstar spike flagged. The PDF opens into a simple heat map, vague descriptors glowing at the edges. Liaison, placement, coordination, uncoupled from any milestone we hit. Payments crest at odd intervals, like a tide chart drawn by someone who has never stood on a pier. A small line graph shows the rise of Northstar bills against our project calendar, the two refusing to rhyme. Her note is dry. Recommend freeze on discretionary AP routing until vendor validation complete. It is the closest thing to a balm I've felt in days. Upstairs, Maya waits with a paperback about a lighthouse keeper and his daughter. Page 8, I say, and my voice doesn't crack. Read it slow, she whispers. I do. The beam turns on in the story, the foghorn answers. When she sleeps, I brush a curl off her cheek and tuck the book under her blanket like a roof tile. Back in the garage, I sit on the cold concrete with my back against the bench and let my breath find a square rhythm. The planer is quiet. The screws in their bins look like small currencies. For the first time since I built it, the house feels staged, as if someone asked me to play a man who lives here and I am doing a passable job. I stand, power down the laptop, and switch off the light. In the dark, the garage holds, plumb and true, while the rest of my life waits for the next fastener. Breakfast is choreography, knife against toast, kettle sighing, the fairy's low breath traveling in through the window screen. I set Lila's mug where her hand will land without searching. She floats in with that easy brightness people mistake for kindness and scrolls through her calendar like a dealer fanning cards. Eric can really take the client reins. You deserve to think big picture, she says, voice dipped in care. I nod in a way that reads as agreement and stir my oatmeal. Big picture sounds generous. In practice, it is a hand on my tools. After the kids leave, I sit in the truck with the heater on low and put Mark on speaker. He is all checklist. Change mechanics, not narratives. Timestamp everything Rainline Holdings files this morning. The trust paperwork routes to a mobile notary by afternoon. Bank titling adjusts with neutral language. Efficiency review. Governance refresh. I do not type words like protection or betrayal. I write dates, confirmation numbers, the clerk's first names, and the time of day the printer jammed. Procedure is a raft. It floats no matter who points at it from shore. The bank branch smells like carpet cleaner and old coffee. I sign in blue ink because black hides in photocopies. The officer compliments my thorough packet and staples a page exactly 3/8 of an inch from the corner. I notice because noticing is what I do. Just making sure our approvals keep pace with growth, I say. My voice is the same one I use with inspectors. It is polite and contains nothing you can twist. At home, I write a company memo about raising internal controls. No theatrics, no villain. We're aligning permissions with audit best practices. Discretionary vendor routing moves through my desk for now because someone has to own the weight. North Star's access narrows to a slit. I hit send and file a PDF of the memo into TRUTH/governance, then back it up to the encrypted drive the size of a stick of gum. At lunch, I meet the principal in a small office that smells faintly of dry erase. I explain that our family may shift schedules and that I'm asking for grace around drop-offs and pickups. I do not scorch the air with blame. "We can flex," she says. Her pen taps a polite rhythm. I leave with a plan and the soft fatigue that follows measured speech. Outside, a mower combs the soccer field into stripes. I stand there longer than I need to and let the hum smooth me flat. Dinner is theater again. Lila praises my new openness to delegation and suggests Eric front a PR push, the kind with reels and behind-the-scenes walkthroughs. I thank her for the idea and ask Maya about the lab and science. Noah eats fast, eyes on his phone, a boy pulled by a current he thinks he controls. I stack plates and let the performance move around me like weather over a fixed roof. Night is paperwork and quiet. The notary stamps the trust with a seal that leaves a faint ridge under the pad of my finger. I slide deeds into the family folder, copy scans into truth/governance, and set alerts at the bank that ping me for any vendor changes, tripping descriptors like liaison or placement. My eyes ache the way they do after plan review, a clean pane that says you did the work. The clip drops the next afternoon. A neighbor DMs me a link, the kind people send when they want to be first to know and last to help. The audio is distorted. The hallway sentence about me being a fool, laid over out-of-context footage of me hauling tools, my face caught between effort and private thought. The caption is a smirk. Old money, new horns. HOA Facebook giggles. A podcast laughs tinny through a phone speaker. It is a small cut in a visible place. I go to the garage, close the door, and trace the clip back through its upload. The IP points home. The edit bears the fingerprints of a young cutter. Hard jump, eager grade, music a touch too loud. Noah. Of course he thinks he's protecting her, winning an argument we have not yet staged. My throat tightens and then releases. I print the logs, export metadata, store them under truth/surveillance/social. I do not go upstairs. When a nail pops, you don't slam it back with a fist. You mark the spot and wait for the right hammer. We still have dinner at 6. I still brush Maya's hair before she reads. The brush snags and she hisses, small and sharp, then breathes because I remind her to. Head up, I say. It won't pull as much if you breathe. Her shoulders drop like a plank settling onto level shims. Noah hovers in the doorway, hands buried in hoodie pockets, a boy with a secret burning a hole he can't yet name. After they sleep, I study the photo wall. The crooked frame waits. I touch it, feel the tiny float in the hanger, and leave it wrong. Not yet. I walk the perimeter of the house the way I do before a windstorm. check latches, secure the grill, note the branch that will scrape the roof if the gusts run to the east. Upstairs, Lila laughs into her phone, a sound I have stopped stepping toward. By Friday, Rainline's certificate arrives, the trust is recorded, and vendor alerts chirp in gentle succession. I adjust approvals in the accounting software and write another neutral memo that says nothing and accomplishes everything. The humiliation from the clip cools into steel. It will matter in custody optics later. It will also show a court that I chose process over spectacle. On the deck, the string lights stay dark. Wet fur rises around me, clean and green. I write a single line in my log, facade intact, walls moving, and close the notebook. The night does what all nights do, comes on, indifferent and complete. I stand there, a man no one will applaud for the dull heroism of forms and seals, and feel the house press back into my hands. It is not praise, it is weight. I carry it inside. If you're still watching and this resonates, comment number 1 right now so I know you're here. Don't blink, the turn you're waiting for is coming. Golden Hour turns the yard into a stage set. The banner Lila chose, live loud, love real. Ribbons slightly in the onshore breeze, and the string lights lift one by one like a grid of low stars. I run a hand along the redwood rail I sealed myself, feel the faint bite where a knot took stain differently, then check cables. HDMI seated, power brick warm, remote paired. The test slide throws a clean rectangle onto the pull-down screen. Dust motes orbit the cone like slow snow. I walk the line from laptop to projector and back until I can do it without looking. Calm has a procedure. Guests arrive the way people do when they want to be photographed by their own evenings. Clinking bottles, exaggerated surprise, the chorus of names as orbiting bodies find their chairs. The HOA head, navy windbreaker, folded arms like a habit, compliments the deck's joist spacing and asks about the sealer. I give him the product name and the number of coats. Lila moves through the gold like a swimmer in warm water, cheek kissing, wrist flicking, her dress catching light in the places she once watched. A neighbor hands me a corkscrew and a prayer. Then Eric steps through the side gate, late by design, a blazer shaped for short distances. He hugs me with the confidence of a man who thinks a show of warmth is his best alibi. I pat his back exactly once. A friend taps a glass. Speech? Lila turns to me with that camera-ready look. Tell them how much you love me. I step forward. The remote is a small weight in my palm, a fastener waiting for torque. Thank you for coming, I say, voice steady enough to set tile. 14 years teach you the value of good joinery, what holds, what fails, and how silence sometimes keeps a thing standing until you can repair it. I click. The first image fills the screen, hotel lobby marble, all gloss and quiet money. Lila and Eric framed like they practiced. Her face tipped up into a kiss not built for shadows. A breath sweeps the deck. No one moves a chair. I do not explain. I click again. The money appears as a river you can wade across, Dr. Cho's flow. Invoices with their pale teeth showing along the header, the line graph rising where our projects did not. I name dates and amounts and descriptors as if reading items off a lumber manifest. No adjectives. The screen does its own work. In the corner, the HOA head tips forward like a man checking plumb. The next slide needs sound. I give them only one line, then kill the speaker so the rest of the night has to hear itself. He actually thinks the 2 kids are his. Keep him soft. The sentence lands and then seems to keep falling. Lila's smile detaches from her face and looks for a place to sit. Eric checks the perimeter for doors that don't exist. Somewhere a moth taps the screen. I click to the lab report. Clean header, coded IDS, probability of paternity 0%. Then again, a second report, same answer, 2 separate sheets like matched lumber stamped from different mills. I tell them chain of custody, how timestamps travel with files if you let them, how you resist the temptation to name a feeling before you number a fact. I do not look at my children's names. They are not on these pages. Grant, Lila says, hands raised, palms patient. Please, not like this. Eric lifts a diplomat's tone. Let's talk privately. I meet him with a small nod that declines without fraying. Here is private enough for what was done in public. The crowd has stopped pretending to be a crowd. It's a room now, and rooms decide things. I click again and step away from the light so they can see. The garage bay clip plays on a thin lens camera. Colt, my PI, and before that hers, standing too casual at the edge of a concrete pillar. Eric's hand appears with an envelope. Colt's hand receives it. The audio is clipped but clean. Colt mentions how mental cruelty might present better if he couldn't catch bruises, the kind of line you draft when you think everyone else is dumber than you. The HOA head exhales through his nose, a sound I've only heard after windstorms. A cousin of Lila's slips out, gift bag left behind like a surrendered flag. No one asks me to stop again. They ask themselves how long they've been clapping for the wrong rhythm. I keep my stance square and my sentences short. I wanted clarity. The projector's fan hums at its one available pitch. Chairs begin to scrape. The neighbor who brought me the corkscrew says I didn't know. To the air. A pair of coworkers walk backward to the gate, faces defaulting to neutral like office elevators. For the last slide, I give them the beach photo. 4 figures, sunlit, squinting, a shoreline full of drift that day felt like treasure. In the privacy of light, everyone does a small subtraction. The projector light makes the dust visible again. Moths become comets. Someone's bracelet pings the table. I power down. The screen retracts with a shiver, a blind, leaving a window. The banner overhead looks like the punchline to a joke told hours ago. Lila stands halfway between me and the kitchen door as if the house might pick a side. Eric has moved 2 steps away from her, far enough to claim independence later, close enough to keep options. No one mentions the cake. I coil the HDMI, wind it in figure 8 so the cable remembers a better future, and slip the remote into my pocket. The yard smells like wet fur and white wine. From the water, the ferry gives 2 soft notes that don't travel far. I gather the printed flow charts from the side table and set them in a neat stack, then draw a small circle in the corner with a pencil to mark originals. When the last guest leaves, the deck feels heavier, as if the truth has weight you can measure by square foot. Lila's voice finds me at the edge of the door. You're cruel. I hear the word and let it sit next to the others. I do not pick it up. I look past her into our house, our hallway, our kitchen, the photo wall forcing itself to be art. I wanted clarity, I say. The sentence is the only one I own tonight. The rest belongs to the files I won't have to edit in the morning. I switch off the string lights. The yard goes dark all at once, like a stage refusing an encore. In that clean black, I can finally hear the quiet do what it was built to do. Hold. When the string lights go dark, the yard loses its nerve. The banner droops in the salt air, the projector housing clicks as it cools, and the deckboards remember they are wood again, not a witness stand. Lila's voice reaches me at the threshold, thin as a violin E string just before it snaps. You're cruel. I let the word land and slide. I wanted clarity, I say, and step inside first. The house has always taken its cue from whoever crosses the doorway with a steady hand. On the kitchen island, I square the stack, flow charts, lab reports, the stills, tapping the edges with 2 fingers until the papers align. The counter smells faintly of lemon oil. Lila hovers in the doorframe, testing each angle the way a burglar looks for soft wood. She wants a fight or a bargain. I offer neither. I move a chair in gently so it won't scrape and wake the kids. You don't have to perform, she says, reaching for the old label. Controlling. The word sits on the counter like a tool that doesn't fit any fastener in this house. Pack what you need, I answer, keeping my voice even. The kids are sleeping. Further contact goes through counsel statements, not threats. I watch her decide whether I'm serious, then watch her absorb that I am. The stairs creak the way they do at the same tread every night. Maya stands there with her stuffed animal pressed to her ribs, pajamas twisted, eyes bright with the kind of tears that don't fall yet. I crouch to be small enough for her breathing to find me. This isn't your fault, and you're safe. 8 words, then silence so she can hear them settle. I walk her back, tuck the blanket with the practiced fold, set a glass of water on the nightstand. The lighthouse sketch has slipped to the floor. I slide it back under the lamp where the beam can still reach. Noah fills the hallway with hoodie and hesitation, hands buried deep, gaze snagged on the stack on the island. His jaw wants to be older than he is. I meet him halfway, where the hallway narrows. "See you at 6, I say. A sentence with a job attached. He nods once. It's not an apology. Apologies need room to stand. It's a plank laid between 2 ledges, enough to hold until morning. Closet doors whisper. A zipper teethes across a suitcase like a protest made of metal. Hangers clatter, then hush. Perfume lifts from the bedroom and fades toward the front of the house. Lila stands with her bag at her side and looks as if she expects a speech, either the one where I try to keep her or the one where I try to strip her. She gets neither. I open the door. Night air, fur cool, fills the gap like water finding a new shoreline. She leaves without a slam. I lock the deadbolt and let the tumbler's soft click be the period. The garage is where decisions become policy. I set the phone on speaker and call Mark. He answers like a man who sleeps beside a briefcase. I give him the sequence in nouns and dates. "We'll file for temporary orders in the morning," he says, voice steady. "Exclusive use of residence for you, primary custody with supervised visitation, preservation letters to her Eric, and the PI. We'll circulate vendor freeze notices to your AP file," then silence. Let the order speak. I forward the bundle. Surveillance, financial, DNA governance. Upload bars crawl, receipts return. His got it pings with the relief of a beam sliding into pocket. I scan the Colt payoff clip and attach a short note for Mark and Dr. Cho. No adjectives, just the who, where, when. Mark says he'll prepare a complaint draft for the licensing board when timing serves the larger case. I nod to no one. Digital chores become a ritual. Gate code changed, exterior cameras armed with push alerts, bank triggers set to bark at vendor descriptor edits, email to staff drafted, neutral, dull, correct, expect counsel outreach, operations proceed per internal control memo. I sign with my name and nothing else. I don't want to convince. I want to record. The house breathes differently when a suitcase leaves it. I walk the perimeter, touch latches, check that the side gate is set, that the grill lid is clipped. In Maya's doorway, I listen to the small rhythm that means sleep. The lighthouse on her page points toward a margin I've never noticed. She has added a goal so tiny I need to squint to believe it's there. I straighten the sheet where it folds over her shoulder and step back. Noah waits at the hall's mouth, chewing a thumbnail he pretends not to chew. His eyes flick to the photo wall, then to my face. There's a stone lodged in his throat, and he hasn't learned how to carry it. 6, I repeat. He lets go of his nail and nods again. Okay. One word, almost nothing, and still it moves air. He goes to his room and closes the door like a kid who has learned that the quietest sounds make the strongest arguments. Back in the garage, I slide the USB into its felt sleeve and write tonight's line in the notebook. Chose process over noise. The letters are blocky, the kind I used when I taught Noah to print his name. The heater clicks on and the duct gives a small expansion sigh, the house warming itself without anyone telling it to. I leave the photo frame in the hall an inch off level. Alignment comes after curing. Set it too soon and you bake the warp into the work. I wash my hands as if filings might be on them. Lemon soap, chalky towel. The island stack remains squared, a small city of paper with a skyline of staples. I place the remote and the labeled USB next to it and turn out the kitchen light. In the dark, appliances whisper, the refrigerator's compressor eases into its hum, and somewhere far out, the ferry gives a tone that doesn't quite reach shore. Upstairs, my side of the bed holds its shape. The other side forgets fast. I don't rehearse what I've already done. I count what's left to do in the morning, sign filings, field marks call, send the preservation letters, text the principal a thank you for flexibility, coil the extension cord left on the deck. At 6, Noah will meet me under the deck light we won't turn on. We will carry chairs, stack tables, sweep glass that never broke. We will work shoulder to shoulder and let our bodies say the thing our mouths can't say cleanly yet. I sleep like a man who has finally chosen a cut and made it straight. When the heater hums again, I open my eyes to a house that is held. It is not triumph, only structure. But structure is what keeps a roof over a family until the weather changes its mind. At dawn, the deck still smelled like last night's wine, a sweet sour note tucked under wet fur. Noah and I worked without a script, stack the folding chairs in 4s, coil the orange cord into figure 8s, sweep the corners where moth wings had come to rest in pale confetti. The broom spoke a steady language, bristles against redwood, a hush, a pause, a push. Between strokes, he said a single word that held, thanks. I nodded and let the work answer. Labor done side by side is a kind of apology that doesn't ask to be forgiven. By 8, my phone chimed with Mark's text, orders granted. A courier arrived an hour later, rain beating on the cardboard sleeve. I signed for the packet at the porch rail, the pen leaving a groove in the page where I pressed too hard. Inside, the stamped orders set in a clean stack, exclusive use of the residence, temporary primary custody, supervised visitation, preservation of devices. I scanned the proof of service, filed the confirmation email from Lila's attorney, and slid the packet into a drawer I had cleared the night before. Paper can be a boundary when words fail. A detective from the Business Crimes Unit called through counsel while I was rinsing coffee cups. The call was brisk, professional. Dr. Cho's submission had closed the loop they needed. They were coordinating to detain Eric for questioning. I dried my hands on the dish towel, wrote the time and initials in my log, and felt the house settle another fraction into its new footing. On the way to pick up groceries, I stopped in the principal's lot and waved her over. We kept the talk short, leaning on doors against a wind that wanted to make itself known. We've got her. Use us, she said, chin lifting toward the building where counselors come in early and leave late. I said thank you and meant it more than my mouth could carry. The HOA thread chattered like a fence in gusts. Half apologies spun into backpedals, then into the quiet virtue of non-involvement. A neighbor left a pie on the porch with a square note that read like a tax form. I screenshotted the thread, archived the DM, and slid the pie, still warm, onto the counter for the kids. Reputation is a skittish animal. Better to face it with a still hand and a locked gate. Maya braided twine at the kitchen table for an art project, pulling strands tight with a concentration that narrowed the room to her fingers. I sliced apples in quarter turns, the knife clicking softly on the board. I told her the truth sized to fit a 14-year-old. That families hold in many ways, that presence outlasts paperwork, that love shows up more often than it announces itself. Her shoulders dropped a notch. She said, even lighthouses get foggy, and grinned without quite looking at me. We ate the pie with forks, standing. In the living room, the live stream began like a dare. Noah propped his phone against a mug and spoke into the glow with a velocity he uses when he's trying to outrun doubt. He said he was setting the record straight. He said I was controlling money. He said his college fund was empty and held up a screenshot like a verdict. Viewers climbed in the corner, names I recognized from teams and bus stops, and the brittle friendship that grows in small places. I stepped into frame the way you walk onto a job site you're paying for. Calm, visible, deliberate. I held out a hand for the phone instead of taking it. He hesitated, then gave it to me, and in that exchange, the room changed shape. On a second device, I screen-shared redacted bank statements, account numbers hidden, his name hidden, showing transfers from the 529 to a wallet that Dr. Cho had tied to North Star. Dates, amounts, confirmation numbers. Facts first. Protect the kids, I said, and stopped there. The chat, a creature with many eyes, blinked. The comments turned like a tide cut by a headland. A moderator from his media club typed in all caps to cool the feed. A classmate posted a single "oh." Someone else asked if we were okay. Noah's face registered the sequence. Shock to anger to understanding to something quieter. He ended the stream without flourish, thumb holding the screen a beat too long, and sat down hard. The room finally remembered it was a room. I closed the devices, put them face down, and filled 2 glasses with water. We sat at the table, 3 feet between us that were not a wall. I didn't lecture. We fix what we can, we stop what we can't, I said. He nodded and stared at the wood grain as if it could instruct him. The house kept us in one place long enough for breathing to resume its work. After he went upstairs, I exported the live, the chat, and the analytics, saved the files to truth/surveillance/social, and emailed Mark a short note. Reputational harm mitigated, evidence preserved, miner's identity protected. Dr. Cho followed with a clean visual tying the crypto wallet to an affiliate of Eric's shell. She recommended extending the vendor freeze to 2 connected entities whose names sounded like they'd been chosen by a person trying too hard. I forwarded her note to Mark and updated the control memo. In the late afternoon, I carried the pie tin, now empty, to the recycling and stood in the garage a long moment listening to tools rest. The planer had its own way of going quiet, a residual hum that fades without asking permission. I thought about the first time I taught Noah to sand with the grain and how he ignored me until he scraped and then understood. Learning often travels by friction. Evening restored the small rituals. I read to Maya about a storm that missed a lighthouse because the man who tended it refused to leave his post until the wick burned right. She fell asleep with her wrist draped over the book like a keepsake. Noah hovered in the doorway afterward, eyes rimmed but clear. 6 a.m. tomorrow, he said, not quite a question. It wouldn't hurt, I answered. A routine found a place to click. In the garage, I wrote a single line, truth travels, receipts steer, and powered down the laptop. The house hummed in a way I could carry without flinching. Somewhere beyond the trees, the ferry gave its double tone and disappeared into the wet air, on time, unobserved, doing its job the same as yesterday. Monday begins with a list you can touch. I tape a weekly grid to the fridge, school start and end, who takes the trash, which nights are for laundry, therapy slots in calm black ink. I give myself the least interesting squares. Breakfast becomes an assembly line that would make a city inspector smile. Toast, eggs, lunch boxes, a small stack of fruit cut on the bias because it keeps better that way. I write the words 6 a.m. chores on the bottom margin and underline once. At 9, Maya and I sit in a waiting room that hums like an aquarium. It is an aquarium, in fact, a modest one on a low cabinet, angelfish working their small orbits past a shipwreck ornament. Dr. Patel's desk lamp is soft and yellow. I fill out the intake on a clipboard that has been sanded smooth by 1,000 anxious hands. I tell Maya what I believe about tools and about help. I tell her this is not a verdict, not a diagnosis, not a brand burned into her skin, only a place where a gentle person will listen while we figure out a way to keep our house quiet inside. She lifts her chin and nods like a lighthouse when the fog returns. When she goes in, I do not hover. I make tea in a paper cup and wait on a chair that gives a little under my weight and then settles. Back home, I send Mark the updated school calendars and ask him to propose supervised visitation windows that do not intersect with finals or chorus rehearsals. I write the words neutral site in the subject and in the body, attach the PDF, and keep the sentences short. He replies with a template for a chaperone parameter and asks me to choose 3 options. I do, and file the thread to a folder that now feels like part of the house. In the afternoon, Noah and I drive to the bike shop that smells like chain lube and hard plastic. The owner lets us use the truing stand in the back because we laid decking for his cousin 2 summers ago. We hang a wheel and bring the gauge in until it kisses the rim. Noah learns to sight the wobble not with his eyes but with his hands, the way a good carpenter listens through fingers. I keep the talk to torque and spoke counts and when to ease instead of force. At some point between quarter turns, a sentence arrives he has been trying not to say. He says he did not check before he posted. He says he thought speed would beat doubt. I nod, not as a judge, but as the kind of man who has replaced warped planks he cut too fast. I tell him next time we log before we speak, and that when the topic is family, the plan is post never. He breathes out a soft surrender that is not quite defeat. Dr. Cho's email lands early evening with an economy I admire. She has extended the vendor freeze to 2 entities that rhyme a little too neatly with North Star. She has started a restitution worksheet, green cells where money went out, white cells where it should have gone, a narrow blue column for what might be recovered if the weather holds. She asked for signed vendor preservation letters, and I sign them digitally, then export the confirmations to the governance folder. The folder tree has begun to resemble framing, joists and beams, and headers in tidy lines. The letter arrives with the 4 o'clock mail. Handwritten envelope, the slight slant I know from the way she labeled boxes when we moved. I log the time, photograph the front and the back on the wood counter, and slide a finger under the flap. The paper is good, thick enough to take ink without bleeding. It says 3 sentences. The middle one is the point. I am pregnant. It is yours. The words lie on the kitchen island like a staged still life. A bowl of lemons, a knife, a shadow you cannot measure because the light keeps shifting. I slip the letter into a clear sleeve and email mark a factual note and 1 line about sealed medical records. In the garage, I open the locked binder and remove the page I have not needed to look at since a fall afternoon 9 months before the truth surfaced. Vasectomy, date, physician, follow-up. The page is cold under my fingers, the ink crisp. I copy the front page for counsel only, then return the binder to its drawer and turn the key. I write in the log that we do not disclose unless a court claim is filed, and that we will request a formal paternity protocol if asserted. The words are dry by design. Dry words do not spread. Mark calls to say the same. Keep the letter. Do not respond to her directly. If counsel asserts, we stipulate to a protocol and keep all names out of public filings where the law allows. His phrases are dull in the way bridges are dull. No one admires the beam that holds until the river freezes. Evening makes the kitchen small again, the kind of small that lets people feel held. Maya shades a lighthouse roof while I read a page aloud and trip on a word she corrects without mercy. She laughs, I bow, and the tide in the room changes a centimeter. At bedtime, I say the line I promised to keep saying. Then I click the lamp in a way that does not startle. On the counter near the sink, an extension cord lies in a figure 8 that would make a stagehand proud. Beside it sits a square of notebook paper torn clean and written in a hand that wants to be steady. 6 a.m. I will make coffee. I leave a check mark under it and 1 word, not bad, in a block print that he recognizes as mine. No smiley faces. We are not the emoji kind of family. When the house goes quiet, I do the work that keeps the story straight. I scan the envelope and the letter both sides to a new subfolder labeled Paternity. I write a chain of custody note that includes every minute of the paper's life in my hands. I drag the vendor freeze confirmations to governance and the therapy receipt to a redacted private folder that keeps names in the walls. Then I sit with the file tree open and breathe the way a man breathes after fitting a beam where it always belonged. Before bed, I stand at the photo wall and put my finger on the frame that is still off by a degree. I leave it wrong. Cure before sand, I write in the notebook, and turn off the garage light. The house holds. The aquarium hums in memory. Somewhere the ferry finds its line in the wet dark and keeps it. The week cooled into order the way fresh stain darkens boards before it dries. Morning began with the soft chime of mail and Mark's subject line, terse as a gavel. Interim orders, calendar attached. I printed what mattered, the ink still a little damp when I stacked the pages. Exclusive use of the residence reaffirmed, temporary primary custody, supervised visitation on a schedule that kept faith with school. In a second note, he recorded what we had expected and waited for anyway. Lila's counsel had withdrawn the pregnancy assertion after reviewing sealed documentation with a stipulation held for formal testing only if the claim returned. I logged the time, filed the PDFs, and let the printer's faint ozone curl into the kitchen air. The next email arrived through counsel with more angles than drama. Charging an arraignment notice for Eric. Business crimes moving on the routing of funds through a shell that had always sounded like branding more than work. Dr. Cho's memo attached below was the clean geometry I'd come to trust. Partial recovery initiated through vendor clawback, a second tranche pending counterparty response, spreadsheet linked. I signed the restitution acknowledgement for the civil track, my name steady where my hands were not, then stood a moment at the window until the sound's gray settled the way it sometimes does when the horizon is tired of negotiating. At the shop, I called the site lead about the Queen Anne job. He said the sistered beam carried as designed and the floor no longer hummed underfoot. I repeated good into a space that needed no adjectives and wrote it in my log as if it were a weather note. Back at my desk, I sent a neutral staff update. Operations stable, controls unchanged, gratitude for the work that stays, quiet and keeps. It wasn't poetry, but beams don't need poetry to hold. Noah's unlisted video link arrived in the late afternoon like a bird that had found its own way home. The frame showed him at his desk with the poster I helped him tack straight last year still holding level behind him. No music, no jump cuts. He spoke like a person who had measured his breath against what needed saying. He said he had hurt me and, worse, had helped a lie find oxygen. He said he wanted to earn it back and listed the bland ways men do, rides for his sister, dawn chores, media boundaries written and kept. He didn't ask for a reply and didn't perform remorse. He left the lens before the counter reached a minute. I watched once and answered not with adjectives, but with a list, a shared password sheet, a chores grid with times, a review date 2 months out. I wrote accepted and sent it. We worked on the porch that evening without a call time. A sun-silvered board had gone thirsty and needed sanding and a careful coat. I held the sander, then handed it off. He learned again the small mercy of letting the grain tell you which direction to move. We brushed stain along the length while the day slid toward blue. When the color took evenly, he smiled, a quick cut he didn't mean to let through. I pretended to check the edge for runs and let the smile pass without commentary so it could come back. Inside, Dr. Cho confirmed the first clawback entry had posted. I initialed the line where my authorization needed to live, sent it back through counsel, and closed the laptop. Paper had done what paper could do. The house did the rest just by standing. Maya appeared with a jar of paint and the thrift store brush she guarded like a violin bow. "Just a tiny one," she said, not asking permission so much as offering to make the space honest. On the deck step near the corner where she likes to sit with sketchbook and blanket, she pressed out a 5-point star no bigger than a thumbprint. She let it dry without blowing on it, then put the jar away and washed the brush until the water ran clean. I photographed the star for the family album and saved the picture where strangers would never see it. Some lights are for navigation, not display. When the visitation schedule came back from the center, I printed the calendar and slid it behind a drawer label where little eyes would not land. I told the kids only what belonged to them. A calm place to spend time with your mom, I said at dinner, and left it there. We ate simple food without a plan to impress ourselves. Maya chose the book and corrected my misread of a lighthouse term with the confidence of an apprentice who's already right more often than not. Noah took the trash out without being asked and returned with empty hands he didn't know where to put. Later, alone in the hallway, I faced the family photo that had leaned wrong for weeks. The glass showed a ghost of my face and the line of the kitchen behind me. I lifted the frame, felt the float in the wire, and set the bubble to center. Level is not forgiveness. It is readiness to carry weight properly. I pressed the nail a touch deeper, not to erase what had happened, but to make sure what remained would not tear the drywall when someone brushed against it again. At the desk, Mark's calendar held our next hearing dates. Dr. Cho's sheet ticked forward. The staff note drew 2 quiet replies. I would have missed if I'd been looking for applause instead of continuity. The house smelled of lemon oil and printer heat, of stain just past tack and heading toward cure. Outside, the string lights chose not to speak. The ferry's double tone lifted across the water and passed without needing to be answered. I wrote one last line in the log. Door closed, lamp on. Set the pencil down and let the quiet be enough. Night makes the kitchen honest. The counters hold only what earns its place. A drying rack, the blue pattern mug turned upside down, a small zip pouch that lives by the fridge, passports, insurance cards, a thumb drive labeled in block letters. I wipe the oiled wood with a cloth that smells faintly of lemon and thyme. Papers sit squared in their folder like lumber cut true. The house is quieter now, not because sound has disappeared, but because noise has been asked to leave. Order came at me sideways, piece by piece, until I recognized it as mercy. I used to think dignity showed up as a speech, a spine stiffened in public light. Turns out dignity likes paperwork, calendars, and the habit of not saying what doesn't need saying. Truth keeps better with timestamps than with applause. You stack days the way you frame a wall. Mark your plates, snap your lines, set your studs, check your plumb, nail at the right angle. Then you step back and let the structure carry its own weight. I step out onto the deck and leave the string lights dark on purpose. Redwood cools fast after sunset. The rail holds the day's warmth along its heartwood for a minute, then gives it back to the air in a breath you can almost see. I palm the rail the way a man palps a beam he hung by himself and thanks it, not aloud but in the small language hands speak. Some storms pass loudly, others pass by noticing you won't chase them. Receipts taught me a gentler definition of love. I kept them first to survive. A future courtroom needs proof, a bank needs numbers, a detective needs the line to follow. But as the nights stacked, I realized I was also leaving a trail for my children, a breadcrumb path made of dates and signatures and chain of custody notes. One day when the air is thinner and their lungs stronger, they may ask how we lived through our weather. I want to be able to hand them a folder instead of a performance. I make the rounds before bed, not like a guard, more like a custodian, a word I like for how close it stands to custody without a judge. Maya's door is open to a wedge of yellow. She has fallen asleep with her pencil still in hand and the lighthouse roof shaded just to the edge where the light begins. I draw the blanket over her shoulder and whisper the one sentence I promised to keep. You don't chase storms. You stand ready and lit. She doesn't answer, but her breath evens the tiniest fraction, and that is enough. In the hall, the family photo hangs level, finally, bubble-centered, history intact. Level did not forgive anything. It simply prepared the hanger for more weight. Beside it, the logbook sits on the stool where I left it, a stubby pencil tucked at the coil. I turn a page and write the creed I can obey when words get slippery. Process over noise. Presence over pose, doors, not walls. The pencil leaves a slight ridge. I like that the page remembers pressure. On the corkboard lives a list Noah and I keep with the steadiness of a metronome. Rides, chores, passwords, review date. He passes behind me on his way to bed, shoulders no longer trying to look larger than the doorway. I tap the list, a quiet drumbeat, and keep my voice the size of the task. Keep going. He nods, not as a truce, but as a plan. Dawn has a job for him, and the body understands assignments better than apologies. Boundaries are the kind of love you don't clap for. The supervised visits happen where they should, with a person whose job is to keep the air even. I honor the schedule and the door rules. I don't relight old arguments in new rooms. When Lila texts about logistics, counsel replies, "It isn't cruelty to refuse fresh scenes. It's carpentry. No more nails through the wrong face of the board." In the garage, the bench carries what's left of my patience without complaining. The labeled USB sits beside the notebook like a rivet beside a beam. I slide both into the go pouch and zip the teeth shut until the pull tab clicks. I used to resent tools for being mute in the face of feeling. Now I think feeling asks too much of objects. A clamp holds while glue cures. That is enough heroism for one evening. I stand again in the kitchen and take inventory of the quieter life we built. The school calendar taped to the fridge, the wheat grid with its unglamorous squares, the extension cord coiled in a figure eight by a hand learning steadiness. The tea stain I never quite got out, a shadow small enough to keep. I think about the neighbors who sent a pie and the principal who said, "Use us," and meant it. I think about Dr. Cho's spreadsheets and Mark's dull sentences that built a bridge where I thought only water ran. Gratitude has started showing up like heat from a vent you weren't listening for until it warmed your feet. On the step outside the back door, Maya's tiny star dries to the same quiet gloss as the deck. It is not for visitors. It's for the three of us. A private compass stamped at ankle height, low enough to catch your eye only when you're carrying something heavy and have to look where you place your feet. I photograph it and put the phone away. Not everything that steadies you needs to live on a screen. I cycle the deadbolt and feel the notch engage. The heater clicks and stretches the duct with a soft thawing sound. Somewhere across the water, the ferry gives its double tone, two notes that mean on schedule, under load, moving anyway. I like that nobody applauds a ferry except tourists. I like that it keeps its time whether or not anyone names what a faithful thing it is to arrive. Fatherhood is a tool belt. Tomorrow it will hold breakfast, bus lines, 6 a.m. chores, a run to the hardware store for longer screws, a call to reschedule therapy when practice conflicts, a reminder to bring the book back to the library, a trash bin rolled to the curb, a ride home across a bridge in drizzle. None of it looks noble from the sidewalk. Most of it is invisible if you're not the one wearing the belt. But weight carried daily builds a body that knows how not to drop. I turn off the kitchen light and leave the lamp on in the hallway. It throws a soft cone that doesn't wake anyone and is enough to find a glass of water at 2 a.m. I step onto the deck for one last breath of salt and cedar and then back inside, closing the door the way I wish more endings happened, without a slam, without a speech, just a latch settling into a strike plate that's finally aligned. The house holds. The lamp stays on. The night goes about its work, and so will I in the morning. In the end, not every storm ends with thunder. Sometimes it ends with a quiet room, a level frame, and a promise to keep showing up. What held everything together wasn't fury or spectacle, but the dull heroism of routine. Documents filed, schedules honored, small tasks done on time. Truth didn't arrive as a shout. It traveled on timestamps, receipts, and steady choices that could be checked by anyone willing to look. Dignity wasn't a speech, it was a lamp left on, a boundary politely enforced, and the patience to let facts cure before you sand them smooth. There's a lesson here for anyone rebuilding after a betrayal. You don't need to win the crowd, you need to win tomorrow morning. Repair is a habit, not a headline. Boundaries aren't walls to keep life out, they're doors that close softly so the house can rest. Presence matters more than perfection. Meals on the table, rides on cold mornings, a hand steadying the work until it cures. And when it finally does, you don't erase the seams, you accept them as proof that the structure holds. If this story met you somewhere true, thank you for staying with it. I'd love to hear what resonated most. Was it the quiet choices, the boundaries, the long view of justice? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective helps others who are walking through their own weather. If you found value here, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss what comes next. This community grows on honest conversation and careful listening. Until the next tale, keep the lamp on and let the steady work of tomorrow do what applause never can.